Welcome to the weekly address from the Republic of Boscasia. My name is Jason Boskey. I am the almighty Sigma of the Republic of Boscasia, thereby the head of state and the head of government for this micronation located in the Highlands County, Florida. It is an enclave there. And we are watching the world around us fall into chaos is what's really happening at this moment. So a couple things that I do want to mention here. The Republic of Boscasia is very sorry to hear about the passing of Pope Benedict, the Jesuit Pope of the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church. And being a Jesuit, he had a long history. He was the first Jesuit Pope. But being Jesuits, the Jesuits have a long history of being on the more, how do you want to put it? I would call it the right side of what the Christian God is proclaimed to believe in, what Jesus Christ taught, particularly if you look at the Sermon of the Mount of the Gospel of Matthew. The Jesuits were right there with all that Jesus taught at the Sermon on the Mount. I was brought up Catholic. I was confirmed in my 8th grade year. And had I stayed with the faith, it would have been purely because of the Jesuits, because of their teachings as far as how to treat those that think differently and how to respect people. A lot of the tenets of Boscaism, the overriding philosophy behind the Republic of Boscasia, you could trace back indirectly, I would guess, to the beliefs and the philosophy of the Jesuits. Like I said, I am not a Catholic anymore, although I do adhere to many of the Catholic traditions. And as a result of that, the culture of Boscasia has that feel to it. Among them, the abstinence of meat on Fridays during Lent, the time between Ash Wednesday and Easter Sunday. These little things that are part of the culture of Boscasia, the culture of Boscaism, they continue to go on through me. But I did want to send out to all of the Catholics in the world who might be listening to this, and the Boscasians who do follow the Catholic religion, that we are very sorry about the passing of Pope Benedict. Also, that same day, and this is very meaningful for the Republic, was the 9th anniversary of the passing of Prince Rogers Nelson, also better known as Prince, or the artist formerly known as Prince, depending on when you discovered him. He had performed a couple of concerts at the Fox Theater in Atlanta a few nights before. I was lucky enough to be at the early show. He did 2 shows on that day, one at 7 and one at 10. I was at the 7 o'clock show. And as would be appropriate in light of what happened, he, instead of playing Purple Rain, I don't think he played it at both concerts. He did not play Purple Rain at the first concert. And I was okay with that. Purple Rain is not among my personal favorites for Prince. I like the song, don't get me wrong, but Prince has so many fantastic songs that Purple Rain does not make the favorites list for me. But he did play Sometimes It Snows in April. And April has become a very sad month, a remorseful month for me, because, we had Prince in 2016, passing away on his way back from, or he made it back, but they had to take a detour because he got sick on the plane ride. And then in April 2017, my mother passed away. So Aprils are a rugged month for me. And Sometimes It Snows in April is the perfect song for it. He certainly was not thinking about my situation when he wrote that song for the movie Under the Cherry Moon, but it has been apropos for me ever since. So, but those are two of the events in the world that I did want to acknowledge today before we get on to other things. So, on the bright side of April, the annexation is set to officially occur at the end of the month, April 30th. At that time, Boskey will, as I've said before, triple in size from the 10-acre enclave that it is to a 30-acre enclave. And so that is a big positive for me. I saw somewhere that that solar panels coming from China are going to be are either going to be or are exempt from the 145% tariffs. I don't have a source on that. I think I saw a graph about that on one of the periodicals, and I don't remember which one, so I can't point back to that. But that would be very beneficial for Boskey as we begin to develop the country, in particular because renewable energy is something that I believe is being near the tropics. It is a good way to bring in revenue and industry to Boskey through the sale of electricity and the maintenance of the solar panels of the solar array. So, looking to do that. That will, if that is the case, that will be positive. Otherwise, it's going to be an incremental approach to building out the array. It had originally been planned for a 50 kilowatt array. If the tariffs are in fact in place, it probably will have to build up to 50K or 50 kilowatts, I should say. So that's where that stands. The United States financial markets are all over the place. Because nobody can seem to figure out what is serious and what is bluster in order to try and create negotiating strength on the part of the President of the United States. It's difficult to deal with volatility. It's difficult to take seriously any olive branch that is offered to you by somebody who the next minute would slit your throat. It's just very difficult to make that leap to say, okay, we are dealing with an honest broker here. And as a result of that, we have the ability to strike a deal that we all believe in. And a good example of that is the trade agreement that went in between or among Canada, Mexico, and the United States during the president's first term. And then during very early in the second term, he said that's the worst deal that's ever been done. And he puts tariffs on Canada and he puts tariffs on Mexico. And he uses the fentanyl as an excuse in order to do that. And no one is willing to say, no, that is not the right thing to do. But when you are dealing in situations like that, when you do not treat people and you treat I don't really call them adversaries, being in banking as long as I have and in the finance side of banking, I refer to them as counterparties is really a better way to look at it. Because they're not adversaries. That gives the idea that it can only be zero sum. That trade is there's a winner and there's a loser. It's not a non-zero sum game, as it were. When the whole idea behind trade and getting away from mercantilism is that trade is a non-zero sum game. Trade makes things better for both nations when done in integrity and in intelligence, and to an extent in magnanimity, right? And all of these things are, part and parcel to Boskey. And if you don't treat people like that, nobody ever believes you. So they're always looking for what is the out that they're going to use to get away from this without going through the channels that we have agreed to. And that becomes a problem. That becomes a big problem when you want to be an honest broker in things like this, right? I mean, you can't, the people who are negotiating on behalf of the United States, they can't really present themselves as having the ability to actually negotiate something, because the president at any point in time could say something that will make everybody not believe what we've been negotiating towards. It is something that, should I ever have to enter into negotiations with the United States, that I would be very concerned about. And the only hope that you have is that those that follow the president are able to build up enough integrity and enough trust that the counterparties, the negotiating partners, the other nations, will be satisfied that what you agree to, you will do. It's very difficult to do anything with somebody else if you go at it from a position of, how can I get out of this? Or, I'm just saying this, but you know what? I'm so much more powerful than you that I don't have to actually adhere to the deal that we put together. It's Darth Vader in Empire Strikes Back, right? I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it further, right? I mean, he could have walked away. He could have walked away with Luke, and Han would have gone to Jabba the Hutt, and nothing else would have happened. Of course, then you don't have a movie. But when you use power like that, right, you create enemies. And I don't see how that is to the benefit of the United States, to create enemies simply because you're no longer trustworthy, right? And as a leader of a micronation with a burgeoning economy, I could take advantage of some of those around me, right? I could say, okay, I need you to do this for me, and then not pay them. And they would have to go down the path of spending more money to trying to get that money from me. And there's no guarantee that they would be able to do that, or it might cost them more to do it. And when you rely on that as a negotiating tactic, when you rely on that as, you know what, go ahead and sue me, see if you get me to pay, that is not a way, that is not negotiating with integrity. And everything about today with what I'm talking about comes down to integrity. The big story in the United States right now, or one of the big stories, because there's always a bunch of big stories right now, is the immigrant Kamal, I think that's how you say his name, but mostly I've only heard it referred to as Abrego Garcia, who the United States admitted mistakenly picked him up and deported him to a prison in El Salvador. But they did not offer any kind of due process. Now, why does due process matter? Due process matters because if you want to live in a free society where you do not have to fear the acts of the government, due process is required. You have to be able to meet your accusers. You have to be able to defend yourself. You have to have the grievance against you. And when you're talking about the government coming at you, oftentimes those are crimes. But you have to have that grievance adjudicated. So to say that this person, based upon confidential it was a confidential informant, based upon the testimony of a confidential informant that was never questioned on cross or anything like that, and it's also 7-8 years. It's also years old stuff to use that. And this is one of the things that I would say about that, right? Because, I mean, this is something that could occur in Boskey. It is one thing to deport somebody without due process. Okay, I have an issue with that, but saying, okay, you cannot prove that you are a citizen of the United States. You cannot prove that you entered the United States through the legal channels that the United States offers. You got to go home. That's one thing, right? And I'm not saying that Abrigo Garcia did that. That's not what I'm saying at all. I believe he came under asylum, and he's married to a U.S. citizen. I think it's not like I've done a lot of study on him, because it could be anybody. It doesn't matter that it's him. But he has reason to be in the United States. And the fact that he was sent to a prison in El Salvador, not just sent to El Salvador, dropped off at the airport and said, okay, kid, have fun. But he was sent to prison under the auspices, not proven allegations, under the auspices that he was a gang member. And the United States government admitted that they made a mistake, that this was, what did they call it? An administrative error, I think is what they said. So the courts, all the way up to the Supreme Court, said you have to facilitate his return. Well, the United States government is doing nothing about it. And the president is doubling down on the initial idea that he was a gang member, MS-13, I think it is. So there are a couple things with that. Number one, and this is just real quick on the credibility. The president, when he was a developer in New York, took out a full-page ad, basically saying that the Central Park five young men who were accused of raping a woman in Central Park should get the death penalty. It turned out that they were innocent. They were not the perpetrators of this crime. He still won't admit that he was wrong. He doubles down on it, he triples down on it, and now I believe that the Central Park Five are actually suing him for defamation because he said something recently about it. Statute of limitations gone. Just keep your mouth shut and you don't have to worry about it. But he can't help himself. He does not know how to say that he made a mistake. He can't say he made a mistake with tariffs. He can't say he made a mistake with Abrigo Garcia. He can't say he made a mistake with the Central Park Five. Right? And he won't even say he made a mistake with appointing Jerome Powell as the Fed chairman, which now he's saying that Jerome Powell is a problem as far as the economy goes. But we'll get to that in a second. The issue is the government has admitted that they made a mistake. An error is a mistake. Make no mistake about that. Saying you made an administrative error, that's a mistake. The government, and this is basic integrity, right? This is at the core. You don't need anything else in your character except integrity to, when you admit you made a mistake and you have the ability to rectify the mistake, you rectify the mistake. But this administration, this executive branch of the government, this flavor of it, refuses to rectify their mistake. That is antithetical to a free society. That is antithetical to integrity. There is no integrity when you're dealing with something like that. None at all. And that is the issue. I'm not going to trash the president on the grounds of what I think he's thinking or what I think he's trying to do. I'm not going to judge the motives of the president. There are so many other people who are more qualified and more interested in doing so. And as an observer of the United States from my little enclave, it doesn't serve me purpose to try and figure out the motivation. But what I can do is say that things that are done, and what I will do is say that things that are done that are antithetical to the way I believe government should run, when things occur that I believe are antithetical to a free society, and they are antithetical to Boskeyism, which is the underpinnings of how I believe people should live, let alone run a government or run a country. That is when I will speak up. And this is one of those cases where I will speak up and say that that is opposed to the idea of integrity. Not rectifying a mistake that you have the ability to rectify is the opposite of integrity. That is corruption. When you admit you made a mistake and you will do nothing about it, that is corruption. And that is a problem. That is the problem of this. They're not offering due process is a problem that is antithetical to a free society. That is also antithetical to integrity. And it's also you could also make an argument that that is antithetical to compassion. But that is the way that this government is treating this situation. And make no mistake, if the government does not have to prove what it is saying about you, then you can only hope that this is a slippery slope argument, right? And the slippery slope is a logical fallacy. Okay, the assumption that you can go from not providing due process to an immigrant, through to they do not have to provide due process to a citizen, or that they would not provide due process to a citizen. That is the slippery slope. But the question that you have to ask yourself is that the slippery slope, or is that a logical conclusion? That if they are willing to use their power like that, then are they willing to use their power against anyone? And it is causing a lot of people to be fearful, about what might happen to them if they speak up. There is some of that with me. Will there be consequences to Boskey? Will there be personal consequences for me if I say anything? Sometimes you have to say something. This is a case for me where I have to say something. And now I am not as animated as others are about it. That does not mean that I have less thought on it or less feeling on it. It means that I'm not as animated. If you want to see me animated, You should have seen me watching WrestleMania or seen me watching WWE Raw last night, as professional wrestling is the national sport of Boscasia. You would have seen me animated. But for certain things, I feel that I need to keep a cool head in order to assess what's going on. I am much more Marlin than Dory, for those of you who know the Pixar movies. Along the lines of comments that are out of line and are dangerous, lately the president has been talking about trying to find a way to remove the chairman of the Federal Reserve, or the chairman of the board of directors of the Federal Reserve is a better way to put it, for Jerome Powell, because he is not doing what the president wants him to do. Okay. Now, I don't think that there is a president around who has felt like the chairman of the Fed has done what the president has wanted him to do. I'm sure that President Biden did not want Jerome Powell raising interest rates into the stratosphere, creating an incredible inverted yield curve. Well, we can talk about the yield curve some other time. If you have any questions on any of these financial things that are going on, please email them to almightysigma@boscasia.org. I will be glad to talk about them. But the Federal Reserve, the board of directors of the Federal Reserve, needs to remain independent because they need to be able to make the decisions free from political influence. You can never be free of politics. Let's just be clear. Janet Yellen does things differently than Jerome Powell, does things differently than Bernanke. You can't get away from politics. And really, when you're talking about politics in that aspect, you're really talking about political philosophy on things, tight money versus easy money. How do you want a tight money policy? Are you a deficit hawk, et cetera, et cetera? There's lots of things that any economist or financial professional has going on in their mind. You can't get around it, and it's okay, right? You need that push and pull in order to find the right solution in most situations. But to start talking about wanting to remove Jerome Powell it sent the market into a tizzy yesterday. And then, him doing his normal, oh, just kidding. I didn't really say that I was going to try and remove Jerome Powell. And that's the kind of thing that makes the markets nervous. And to an extent, there are people who believe that he's doing that on purpose with intention, either to try and get the other side to blink or to create, and that would be the decent answer. There is no good answer for this, but that would be the decent answer. What you run into is the possibility that he's manipulating markets. I personally do not believe he has the wherewithal to realize he's doing that, but it is not out of the realm of possibility. So the key to everything with all of this, though, is integrity. If you act with integrity, if you govern with integrity, if you lead the government with integrity, these are things that you don't have to worry about, because no one, when you have integrity, people might question your judgment as far as this is a bad idea, this is a good idea. Nobody questions your motives, because they know that even if they disagree with you, you believe that you're doing the right thing for the nation, for the people, as opposed to for yourself. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back again next week. Have a good rest of your week.